This is Hodor from Devil's Digest, and this time of year is all about holiday traditions. And one holiday tradition that we have at Devil's Digest is taking a look at the Arizona State basketball team at the end of their non-conference play, assessing what they've done to date and how they will fare in the Lions' share of their schedule, 18 straight games against Pac-12 opponents. And for that task, we invite Sun Devil Network color analyst Kyle Dodd. And Kyle, you look at an 11-2 mark by Arizona State, and that's definitely not commonplace in Tempe. Best mark since the 2017-18 season when ASU was 13-0, ranked number 3 in the country at one point. But how would you really compare this year's team to last year's team? Because some would say that at 11-2, this is maybe a more complete team, maybe the most complete team that Bobby Hurley has had in Tempe.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were expecting this team to be or have a chance to be really good by the time, it was all said and done. I think the test was going to be like last year is can they come together with so many new guys and can they kind of adapt and assimilate and get all the pieces moving in the right direction. And I think that happened probably a little bit faster than most people expected. Especially with the schedule that Coach Hurley always puts together in the non-conference. And, at times it was not always pretty as we saw in certain games, but the one thing that was constant throughout is the way these guys compete. And you can tell these guys are winners. They get after it on the defensive end of the floor, which is always going to keep you in games. And to be sitting here at 11-2, I can't say that I'm shocked. Because I really believed in this team, but at the same time, I can't really tell you that I expected it either. So it's just one of those things that feels good. I mean, obviously the last game wasn't great, but that's bound to happen every once in a while. And that's one you just got to, get out of your system. But overall, to be sitting at 11-2 going into the meat of your schedule, the Pac-12 schedule, I think they got to be pretty pleased, and so should all Sun Devil fans.
So look at the two losses, Kyle, and they're very different in nature. The loss really early in the season to Texas Southern on the road, an overtime loss. And as much as people were disappointed, they felt it really was maybe the wake-up call that a team needed, which is kind of maybe weird to say so early in the season, but you saw the way they played just days later in Brooklyn, beating VCU and Michigan, really trashing Michigan in the back-to-back nights. So people looked at that in the vacuum and said, hey, you know what? As disappointing as unexpected as that loss was to Texas Southern, it served a purpose. But now you look at the loss going into Christmas break at San Francisco, a 37-point loss, even without Desmond Cambridge, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. You probably didn't expect ASU to play that poorly. And some people would say, and they're probably more maybe skeptical or cynical fans in nature, that maybe that loss to San Francisco is showing that people that are bullish on Arizona State should really cool their jets and maybe expect disappointment to follow. I mean, I know it's kind of hard maybe sometimes to get rid of a recency bias, but do you really take that loss to San Francisco, as dominating as it was of a loss, as just an aberration? Or do you think, like, you know what, let's take a step back and maybe realize that there were some areas of the team that were exposed in that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously after the game, you get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, we didn't deserve to be ranked. We don't deserve." I mean, yeah, we did. Like we were 11-2. You won a bunch of neutral site and road games against good competition. You deserve to be ranked. There's no question. Now after that, are they going to fall out of the rankings? Yes. Do they deserve to? Probably so. Yes. After that performance, but I think the big thing for Sun Devil fans to need to realize is that those things are going to happen, and it was kind of, to me, the perfect storm. They had been on the road for 5 straight weeks, going to Brooklyn, twice to Texas, to Colorado, and they've been traveling all over the place. It's the game before Christmas where all the guys, half the guys are catching red eyes to go home, and we've talked about the challenge of that year in and year out. You don't want to go home too early. You don't want to get on that plane too early before the game, and then you have Desmond Cambridge, who's arguably their best player over the last several, games. The ability to score the basketball, shoot, to stretch the floor. He's out, and it was just kind of the perfect storm. I mean, they had been coming off a bunch of sickness, in the prior week, and I mean, these are all excuses and nobody wants to hear it, and that's fine. I don't buy into it either. I mean, that's a game they probably should go, and if they played again, they expect to win. But I think, all in all, you expect some low points like that, and you just hope that that's the lowest of the lows for this team. But overall, if you look at the 13 games, you saw a lot of good things. And was there some stuff exposed in that game? I'm sure they're going to take a look at some stuff and think about things they have to do differently, especially with the next opponent. It's not like you come back and play somebody that's just a run-of-the-mill Pac-12 team. You got your rival and one of the best teams in the country coming to your building, so it's going to be a challenge. But that being said, I think it came at a good time. If there ever is a good time to get beat up pretty good, and go home for Christmas, spend some time with your family, come here, get back to work, and go try to beat your rival on New Year's Eve.
So you talk about Arizona State really stepping up their game defensively, and I think that numbers-wise, this is probably better than the defense that they displayed in that 1 year where Zylan Cheatham and Lou Dort played. Even though I think the rebounding of that team from a couple of years ago was better than this year, but then again, you just look across the board, and I know again that's why the game at San Francisco was such an anomaly, because ASU has been playing outstanding defense, are ranked top 5, not only in the Pac-12, but nationally in some major defensive categories over there. What in specific, Kyle, have you seen from this team just on that end of the court that makes it so different and so much better than anything that we saw in the Bobby Hurley era?
To me, I look out there and I see the length and the activity level on the defensive end. You got guys behind you for once that can offer rim protection, and it's not just Warren Washington. It's always nice to add a 7-footer who can block shots, but you got length in multiple places. Coming off the bench, you got Gaffney and Duke, and those guys can offer rim protection as well. They're good team defenders. And then you got length on the wings. I mean, the amount of deflections that this team gets, not only steal, I mean, the steal numbers are insane, but deflections, you see, it's just very active with their hands. They guard the basketball extremely well, and that starts with Frankie and DJ, and then Austin coming in. And for a young guy, that guy really heats up the basketball. When you can trust that you got guys behind you to protect you, it gives you a lot more confidence to get out and guard the basketball and get in passing lanes. And I think that's what's really stood out to me, is just the length, athleticism, and just the tenacity on the defensive end. I mean, there's been times, the Colorado game in the second half, and Stanford first half, and Michigan, and just some of the times where they played really well, you looked and you felt like it was a success for the other team just to get a shot off at times. And so many times the shot clock was running down to 1-2 seconds, and that's just, it was fun to watch, and you really enjoy a team that can get out and guard like that.
So let's move to the other end of the court, Kyle. And Arizona State, respectable number 5 in the Pac-12 in offense, scoring only 72 points. Do you think it's maybe a function of, if ASU's playing this well defensively, again, at the highest level we've seen in a while, that maybe the offense, quote unquote, suffers because of that? Or do you think maybe there's some other factors why Arizona State really has not been explosive on that end of the court?
Yeah, I think generally when you have a bunch of new players playing together, defensively, it's a little bit easier to get connected faster. On the offensive end, it's always trying to figure out, where guys like the ball in certain spots, and just the chemistry and gelling together on that side. So I expected that to come a little bit slower. I think obviously some guys haven't shot the ball as well as you expected in certain spots, but overall, I think this team still has a chance to be a good team, on that side of the court. And the thing I've noticed on that side is how athletic again they are. I mean, it's a team that gets 7, 8, 9 dunks a game, and 3 or 4 of them are usually highlight lobs. And I think that's what kind of shows me that they're only going to continue to get better, because all those plays are just coming off the break and easy buckets and just sheer athleticism. As they get more connected and again start playing more and more comfortable together and trusting each other, which I think they have. But the more they do that, I think they're just going to get better and better. And I point to last year's team and so many interruptions and COVID stuff that they just never could get on the same page offensively until late in the year. And when they did, it was tough to guard and they were scary to play. And I kind of feel like that team is, this team could kind of do what that team did late in the year, really start clicking on the offensive end. And again, with their athleticism, the dunks and the lobs, that could be fun to watch.
I always like to get your perspective as a former point guard on how the Arizona State current point guard is doing. And no disrespect to Marion Jackson from last year, and I know he was really dealing with an injury that only finally got healed, I guess, in early February, and maybe then he got to see the real Marion Jackson. But Frankie Collins, the transfer from Michigan, I really think it hit the ground running. I mean, you talk about hops and dunks. I mean, even he's getting into the action, and just like yourself, an ASU point guard that's dunking, never gets old to see. But what have you seen from Frankie? And I know you talked about high expectations for this team in general. So is Frankie Collins and the performance that he's been putting on display, has it surprised you, or exactly what you expected coming from such a major program like Michigan?
Yeah, I think going into the year, I heard probably Frankie's name more than anybody from people just with knowledge of the inside knowledge and being around practices and stuff. And so I had, an opportunity a couple times to see him early. And then obviously as the season progressed, I've just been really impressed with his maturity level. He really runs the basketball team. And, I've really kind of seen, it seems like he figures out what's needed in certain games and where he needs to, pick his spots. And you've seen him be really aggressive at times and trying to score the basketball. And then you've seen him really distribute the ball. And I will say, since he got sick, he missed that game at Colorado. I don't think I've seen him just quite as aggressive, especially, coming off looking to shoot the basketball. I don't know if it's a confidence thing, but he's really good in the screen and roll game. He's really good with his offhand. He scores most of his buckets inside with his left hand. Most of his pocket passes are with his offhand, his left hand. He finds guys kind of in their rhythm, not necessarily in his rhythm, but in the scorer's rhythm. So, I've been really impressed with Frankie. And I think, again, as the year goes on, he'll probably be able to figure out kind of where more of his spots are going to come. But right now, I think he just tries to kind of feel out the game and see where his team needs him.
So you talk about having high expectations for the team, and so you're not really surprised by 11-2 mark. But has there been one aspect, Kyle, that maybe has disappointed you to date? Maybe an unpleasant surprise that you can point to?
There's been times where I thought we would have shot the basketball better. We've gotten, some decent looks and just, shots haven't fallen in certain stretches or certain periods of each game. But again, that's to be expected. I think a lot of those shots, again, early on, were kind of like guys just trying to figure out, is this a good shot? Is this my time? And we've seen the freedom that Coach Hurley allows guys to play with. So I think they're starting to feel that out and figure that out. And a lot of the threes, I think, especially like Dez and DJ, who were in a little bit of shooting slumps early, and then they kind of started creeping out of it. I think they're realizing some of those rhythm threes are the better threes to take, that, rather than raise up and just shoot, which Dez is a tough shot taker, tough shot maker. Yeah. That guy's cold blooded, but those inside out threes, those rhythm threes for the rest of the guys are going to be ones that are going to be available, especially as Warren gets more comfortable and gets more touches down there. So I think if that's one thing, I was hoping they'd shoot the ball a little better from the outside. But again, I think that's just going to continue to improve. And we've seen when they do get it going and clicking, it's scary. They score in bunches. The second half of the SMU game, the whole Michigan game. I mean, we've seen the Creighton game. We've seen when they're hitting shots. It's really like lights out, because we know what they do on the defensive end.
I know you're still in the process of preparing for the big game on Saturday at home against Arizona, but what you've seen so far from the Wildcats, what can Arizona State expect? Because the Wildcats are a very interesting team. I think we look at the stat sheet, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at this specific element yet. They're number one Pac-12 offense. They're dead last in defense. So this team is more than happy to get into a shootout, maybe even absorb some offensive harm, so to speak, because they feel right now that they can just roll out of bed and put just 80, 90 points on any team, no matter if they're, top 10 in the country or just in the Pac-12. But what do you think Arizona State fans should expect from Arizona, who's right now number 5 in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are extremely clean on the offensive end, very efficient. They run a style, or they play a style that's really fun brand of basketball. And I think if you're ASU, you have to punch them in the mouth. You have to make things uncomfortable for them, because if you allow them to be comfortable and run their stuff and get out and break and get early buckets, it's going to be a long night for you. So I think, essentially the key to me, for me to that game is making them uncomfortable, getting out, playing physical with them. I look back at I know this is a completely different team, but look back to their game against Houston in the NCAA tournament last year, and I thought that's what Houston did. They were physical, their bigs were physical, and it just looked like Arizona at times didn't really want to play that style. And I think if you're ASU, you kind of have to junk it up on them, because they're really talented and really good. They lost a lot, but they reloaded, and Tommy Lloyd's done a great job. And I think it's going to be a really tough test for ASU, but I'll tell you this much. I don't doubt that the Devils will be ready to play. And I know getting healthy and getting everybody back, and it'll be a great game, I think, on Saturday.
And last question, Kyle. I mean, do you think that it may be unfair to assess how ASU bounced back from such a disappointing loss at San Francisco just because they have U of A right now? Do you think that's maybe an unfair assessment to see where exactly ASU is going into the meat of the Pac-12 schedule? Do you think maybe it is more, I don't want to use that word again, fair, to really assess where Arizona State is at when they have the following weekend 2 home games against the Washington schools, games that compared to Arizona are obviously much more winnable?
Yeah, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I think coming out off that game, at San Francisco, you'd probably rather start with the Washington schools, or be great to have Cal at home or something like that. I mean, and not to say that anybody can't beat anybody. You look at Cal. Cal beat up on Texas Arlington, who beat San Francisco. I mean, it's just college basketball is crazy. But I know what you're getting at, and basically, yeah, it's you don't have any time to okay, let's work through this. Maybe we're just struggling a little bit right now, or we're kind of, beat up, and we gotta find a way to get through this tough stretch. It's like, no, bam, you got a top 5 team in the country. Oh, by the way, they're your biggest rival, and you hate them and they hate you, coming in on New Year's Eve, So I think, it's good in a way. You don't have time to waste. But at the same time, if for us that have been around the game and the program for years and years, we're not going to probably overreact as much as the common fan would. But at the same time, you don't want to go out and throw up another clunker against your rival. So I think if you can take a step back at the end of this game, whatever the outcome, and you really feel like ASU played a lot better and played like they've been playing for the first 13 games outside of San Francisco, I think you'll feel pretty good about their chances, number one, and obviously about just where things go moving forward.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much. Happy we're able to keep this tradition alive one more year. Enjoy the rest of the week, and I will see you and probably many people watching this video Saturday, high noon at Desert Financial Arena. Arizona State hosts Arizona. Kyle, thank you so much.
Thanks, Hod. Anytime. And make sure, if you're listening, get out there. It should be 99% gold. Don't let those dudes come in our arena. I know they will, but let's show up and show out, Sun Devil fans.